Son of Sea Foam by CaffeinatedFlumadiddle. Chapter 8. Percy had never been more desperate to get to sleep in his life. The hope, in theory, was that he would open his eyes to find Evelyn and let her know they were in the labyrinth so she could come and get them. However, that was in theory. A theory that did not work because the second he slipped off into a dreamlike state, he found himself on Olympus. Please, please, I beg you. I don't know. Father? Father! Percy spun around. That was Evelyn's voice. Sure enough, Evelyn herself was attached to it. He felt a stab of alarm up until he digested she was in an old, torn dress and not anything modern. Another flash, perhaps? He inwardly groaned. This was the last thing he needed. Still, he felt unable to look away as Evelyn was dragged across the floor, covered head to toe in blood and trembling. Zeus sat stoically on his throne alongside the other Olympians. Hades had also made an appearance, shrouded in the darkness as he watched Evelyn sobbing on the ground impassively. This is cruel, Poseidon said, voice tight. Dionysus? I did what you asked, Dionysus snapped. Her mind is restored, though I can't promise it will stay that way for long. You did not need to bring her here. Not this, Poseidon hissed, as Evelyn sobbed harder between garbled pleas. Percy frowned. Not for what? It was then that Percy noticed Evelyn wasn't alone. It would have been kinder to keep her mind at bay for this, Poseidon continued, voice sharp with disapproval. Brother, I beg of you to let her go, at least until this part is over. Am I supposed to show mercy? Zeus snapped back and pointed to the ground beside Evelyn. After that? Look, child, if you can ask her for mercy, then I will gladly grant it, he said. Percy closed his eyes. He didn't want to see. The dream didn't seem to allow such a cheat, and the image sharpened from behind his eyelids as Evelyn looked down to where Vera's body was splayed in blood, with her eyes opened and lifeless. You are aware you are the one who killed her? Zeus asked dryly when Evelyn tried to scramble away with a scream. I don't know what happened, Evelyn whispered, shuddering. Please, I didn't mean to. I don't know what's happening to me, she stuttered out. Father, please, she said, and Poseidon closed his eyes. Zeus, he whispered. You are being cruel for allowing this to be drawn out, Poseidon, another goddess spoke. Hera, let the matter rest. It's been agreed upon? No, Evelyn shouted and reached out next to her. No, you fix me, right? Please just fix him too, she said and gestured to the other demigods beside her. Percy choked back a gag of horror. Some were dead, like Vera, yes, but others were very much alive. A few were struggling against their bindings, while others stayed distantly. I'm sorry, child, Apollo frowned. Dionysus' aid will not be permanent. This is the kind of option. No, please, just... We can figure something out, Evelyn begged, almost breathlessly, as she tried to shield whoever was next to her. Please don't do this. Don't... Father, she said again, eyes glittering with tears. Nobody paid her any mind. If you think this is cruel, Ares said from his throne, leg lazily thrown over the side as he ate some grapes. Kill the brats, and the suffering will end sooner. Not that I mind either way, he said with a wicked grin. Evelyn kept shaking her head, begging over and over again. Percy felt goosebumps on his skin rise as he realized exactly what was about to happen. He stepped away. No, he didn't want to see this. The scene spun around, so it was in front of him again. Janice, Ares called, and a man sitting off to the side glanced over. Make sure the girl doesn't try anything. You've made your choice, then? He asked, standing up. Percy felt his eyes widening as he turned, revealing two faces. Evelyn screamed and jerked forward, but Janice had materialized next to her, forcing her back. Ares looked pointedly at Zeus. A beat of silence followed. There are too many dead, he said tiredly, to justify any other decision. No, no, please, please, I beg of you. I'm afraid prayers won't help you now, Janice told her loftily. A shame. If I was better worshipped, I might be inclined to help. Well, not this again, Aphrodite muttered. Janice, do you think now is an appropriate time? Poseidon is right. At least have the girl escorted out before. A bolt of lightning flashed. There was a horrible moment of pure silence in which the smoke cleared. Evelyn was completely still from where she was struggling against Janice's hold. For a moment, there was only shock as she looked down blankly next to her. Clarence? She whispered, and fell back on her knees. Percy felt his heart shatter for her. She might have tried to scream, but no noise came out as she tried to grab at the boy she had been shielding. Where's the next? Zeus asked calmly. This seemed to snap Evelyn back. Well, to an extent. Her words an incoherent string of pleas and sobs as she looked desperately down the line of demigods. Zeus glanced at her with absolutely no emotion. No, no, don't. Please, 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 she said, and Janice yanked her again when she went to move. I know, she managed, when Zeus's eyes fell onto the next victim. Father, do something, she said, and Percy shook his head. You can't. Hades, my lord. You can't let him. You can't. She screamed hysterically, trying to jerk away from Janice's grip. No, Hugo, she shouted, and struggled some more. Hugo himself was still covered in the ichor he had seen from when he fought Vera and Evelyn. Percy stepped back. He had hoped, at the very least, the gods would have killed him immediately after he had been caught. Apparently not. Brother, Hades interjected. Poseidon's daughter was allowed leniency. Perhaps I will allow you one as well, Zeus interrupted. But not this one. Not after he attempted to slaughter my daughter. Yes, he said, nodding to Artemis's empty throne. Didn't know, Evelyn said, and managed to escape Janice's grasp for a moment. She raised her hands and froze, looking stunned when her powers met resistance. She turned betrayed eyes on Poseidon, who only looked away. He wouldn't have, you know that. Hades gave a defeated sigh as his eyes turned regretfully to where Hugo sat in a dazed state. At Evelyn's screams, he blinked a few times. Evelyn? He muttered and coughed. Falling onto his hands, Evelyn was yanked back. See, he's coming back. You can't, please. Another bolt of lightning. Percy tried to turn away again. He wasn't watching this. Still, nothing could block out Evelyn's screams. It's strange, someone said. This happened over 50 years ago, and yet for me, it was last week. Percy turned back around to find another Evelyn next to him, watching with a blank face. I can barely even watch it, he told her. Someone else was being dragged forward. I don't know how you lived through it. That's Robert, Evelyn said, voice completely monotone. Zeus' son. Watch. He won't even blink. Another flash of lightning. Percy flinched. He loved baseball. Tried to replace capture the flag with it, Evelyn continued. It was so dumb, but we always gave in when he wanted to play. I remember when he first came to camp, a little younger than me, she said with a weak smile. Percy couldn't figure out how to respond to that. That's Kent. He was Hugo's older brother. I didn't know him well. Never really at camp, but Hugo adored him, she said softly. I went to his birthday, and he cried when I made him some cake. I think people could have been kinder to him, she murmured. Another bolt of lightning. There's Julia. I think James was already dead at this point. That wasn't as bad. There she is, she said, and her voice broke. A little girl who must have been maybe 8 or 9 was next. Sarah. She was the youngest. Father, the other Evelyn tried. No, no, she's just a child. Please, she's just a child. Please. Let me trade places with her. She's only a child. I've lived my life. Please, please. Poseidon opened his mouth, possibly to relent based on his expression, but Zeus had already struck. Evelyn screamed as she collapsed onto the ground, hitting it before clutching her hair and going completely silent. How many of you were there? 21, Evelyn said with no hesitation. 6 of us, 10 of Zeus, and 5 of Hades, she said, as a girl who looked eerily like Bianca was dragged up next. Evelyn took a step towards where the past version of her was on the floor, pretty much defeated at this point. Janice was watching her with an air of annoyance. You made your choice, child, he said to her. I could have helped you with your choices, if only you'd thought to pray. Gods, Percy muttered. Evelyn laughed. It sounded hollow. Some minor gods are upset they haven't been properly worshipped. Then there are gods like Janus, who are a different breed, she said decisively. Wait, here comes my favorite part, she said bitterly. Percy turned as Poseidon ignored something Zeus said to shrink down into a smaller form, reappearing in front of her. I want her attacked, he said firmly. Enough of this. If you insist, Janice said, and stepped aside. She is your monster, not mine, he said. He then stepped back when Poseidon turned to him. I mean no offense, he murmured, as Poseidon helped Evelyn up. She looked completely detached. If you survive, little demigod, perhaps rethink your choices, he called as Evelyn stumbled. Maybe try a few more prayers. I recommend starting on your knees. Ignore him, Poseidon said darkly. Soon enough, you won't remember any of this, and I will make him pay later. Yes, I will, Evelyn murmured faintly. Shock. Definitely shock. Dead, she murmured. The Evelyn beside Percy shook her head in disgust. Oh, gods, she said and fell forward again. No, 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 no. I'm sorry, Evelyn said, turning to Percy. I didn't choose to show you this. My mind just can't seem to let go of that night. I wonder why, Percy said. He felt shaken. Everything until this point had been hypothetical. What if? Something unreal. Except now, he saw the very real consequences of what they were up against. They're monsters, he whispered. Evelyn nodded. I need your help, he told her, trying to force himself past the nightmare. Nico D'Angelo, he said, and waved Evelyn's surprise away. I don't have time to explain. He has a marking. Evelyn, the one Hugo had. The one you probably had. He has it, and I don't know what to do, he said, with shaking. You're the only person who I could think of that, he trailed off. Nico was so young. He couldn't imagine something so awful happening to him so quickly. Evelyn went quiet. Nico D'Angelo, she repeated, and sighed. Another bolt of lightning flashed behind them. A son of Hades, right? Hugo's little brother? She said, and ran a hand through her hair. I guess he's out of that hotel we left him in, she mused. There was another. Bianca? Yes, I think she's okay in Artemis's hunt, he said quickly. There isn't a lot of time for Nico, he prompted. Evelyn nodded, biting her lip. I never figured out how the markings worked, she admitted, and Percy's heart sped up. We tried everything, trust me. Barrett cut off Minnie's arm at one point. It was horrible. She shuddered. James showed off and then bit her lip. Never mind. He, didn't make it, she said, and wrung her hands together. The only thing that seemed to keep it away for any length of time was poison. Centaur's blood, Percy agreed. I know. You didn't go to Chiron? Chiron doesn't know about Nico, he said and wrung his hands. He thinks he used to meet his kid. Long story, he added when Evelyn frowned. I couldn't risk Chiron turning him over. Grover told me in the very beginning he never would, but I honestly don't know who to trust at this point, he said, and took a deep breath. You might be his only hope, he said. Evelyn bit her lip. We have a centaur at the Titan camp, she said slowly, and Percy's brows raised. His name is Pholus. He's an augur, so sometimes he says strange things, but nice enough. I'm sure he would give his blood. He has a soft spot for anyone wounded, she added, with a roll of her eyes. At the very least, it will keep it away for a bit, until we find something permanent. I'll take it, Percy said. We're in the labyrinth. Can you find us? Luke has the thread of Ariadne, Evelyn confirmed. I'll get to you. Just make sure to keep moving so that the monsters can't catch up, she said. Percy nodded. Right, they could do that. Grover and Pollux. Do those names mean anything to you? He asked. Evelyn shook her head. They're missing. I need to find them, he said, bringing his hands together. Another flash of lightning made them both jump. Grover is a satyr, and Pollux is the son of Dionysus. If you could keep an eye out for them, I'd be grateful, he said. Evelyn nodded as her eyes slipped back to the massacre behind them. Can I ask you one other thing? Percy asked as an afterthought. Possibly because he was curious, or perhaps to try his best to ignore Evelyn's screams. Annabeth went into the maze to try and find Daedalus. So you guys can navigate it, but you already have the string. Why would you risk her like that? He asked. Evelyn's eyes turned to him. He couldn't imagine what was going through her mind. Slowly, she grabbed his hand between her own and squeezed. Luke asked me the same thing, she said, and looked over her shoulder to where Vera was still lying. She swallowed. Sometimes we don't know what we truly believe or think or feel. And by the time we figure it out, we've already changed, she said, and smiled weakly. Annabeth may not be a traitor, but she is not truly on our side, she told him gently, and touched his cheek. And I cannot risk anything by playing along, she said in let go. Percy pursed his lips. He wanted to argue with that. It was Annabeth, but he also couldn't piss off the person who had agreed to help Nico. Evelyn, he called her when she let go and stood over Vera. Staring down with a strange glint in her eyes, she turned back to look at him. I'm sorry they hurt you. Silence. You know, you're the first who has said to me, she said, and crossed her arms over her chest. Percy smiled weakly. I'll see you soon, Percy, she said, and went back to staring at the body in front of her. Percy still didn't leave. He just watched. But what? He wasn't sure. I read your journal, he blurted out. Evelyn didn't respond. It always sounded like you never liked her much, he said with a nod to Vera. It was a dumb thing to say. No matter how much you dislike someone, very rarely you wish for them to die at your own hands during a bout of insanity. Evelyn's eyes closed. Sorry. It's like I said, she told him, and knelt down with her hand hovering over Vera's eyes, as if to close them. We don't know what we truly believe or think or feel, she said, and let her hand fall away. I'm not in a position to be offering much advice. However, I must caution you against searching for yourself. Sometimes you end up even more lost, she said, and looked back up at the gods. Or we find ourselves in every evil, she murmured. Percy nodded. He wasn't sure he understood, but it felt like poor taste to question whatever state she was in. When Percy's eyes opened again, it was to find himself lying on the dirt ground of the labyrinth. He sat up, finding Castor asleep next to him and Nico playing with a stick, jamming it into the ground as he looked around. Percy rubbed the sleep from his eyes and sat up. Hey there. Nico's eyes snapped at him. Hi, he said, and reached into one of the bags they had thrown together. Hungry? He asked, and pulled out a sandwich. Percy smiled and accepted. He glanced down at Castor, figuring he would give him a few minutes of rest, before pulling out a water bottle to accompany the meal. Percy? Nico asked when he brought his own sandwich. Did you know the ghost, Elliot? He asked. Percy swallowed the bite of his sandwich. He looked so tired and miserable. No kid should look like that. Sighing, he put his food down and shrugged. Not while he was alive. Why did you get scared? Percy considered. When he couldn't decide what to say, he looked back at where Nico was waiting with hopeful eyes. Because back when Elliot was alive, he worked for the Titans, Percy explained. Nico's eyes widened. I think he still does, and told the Titans who you are, which is why you have that mark on you, he explained softly. Nico's hand went to his arm with a frown. But we're going to get it fixed. I have a friend who can help. What's wrong with my arm? It just is going to make you a little sick. We're going to fix it though, okay? He said. Nico bit his lip. Percy decided not to tell him that his friend was also on the Titan side. It seemed too early to get into the nuances of everything with him. Wordlessly, Percy took Nico's arm to examine it. He had only seen the markings in dreams or briefly when Nico showed him. Now that he saw it up close, he ran his thumb over it. It was a perfect circle. It almost looked like a scar, a battle wound of some sort. I thought he was my friend, Nico mumbled. I'm sorry. No, Nico, it isn't your fault, he said, with a shake of his head. There are things we haven't told you. Bianca will explain them soon, okay? Just, he began, but fell silent when grass started to grow around them, springing up in all directions. Huh. Nico's eyes fell to the ground and jerked up. It was creating a small path, turning the corner as a sort of trail to lure them to wherever. Percy narrowed his eyes. I think we should follow it, Nico said, clumsily getting up. Castor, he added, kicking Percy's poor boyfriend awake. There's magic grass. What? Castor groaned and sat up. Oh, this looks fun, he said, studying the grass. We're not following that, are we? No, Percy said. Yes, Nico cried and punched the air. It's my powers trying to lead the way. Demeter stuff, he shouted as both Percy and Castor tried to shush him. This only lasted a moment, considering Nico was already yanking his bag up to follow the trail. Percy groaned. Maybe he would just tie Nico up and haul him around in a wagon or something. Just as he and Castor caught up, he tried to pull him to the side, maybe to just carry him away, but a wooden door had appeared in front. All three of them stared. Should we open it? Castor asked. Nico shook his head. No, that's rude, he told him, and then knocked. Percy wasn't sure how Bianca put up with this for so many years, except the door did open. It flew back with a pop, making all three of them jump. Nico beamed before peering inside. Look, he gasped. It's beautiful. I don't trust beautiful things. With an exception of you, Castor said, turning to Percy. He glared in return. What? If I suck at flirting with you, then you have to also suck. No. Nico, take my side. You're a terrible person, Nico told Castor, and then walked through the door. Percy sighed before following him. It was beautiful inside the room? No, not a room. Definitely not a room. It was a field. A wheat field with the setting sun, dousing everything in gold and a large oak tree in the distance. Percy pulled out Riptide, a little nervous by the lack of water. That was never a good sign for him. Cautiously, he walked to where Nico was spinning around with big eyes. Well, he whispered, and knelt to touch the ground. Lots of people died here. What? Castor asked. Nico shrugged. I don't want to know how you know that. This was a battleground during the Revolutionary War, someone said. Percy grabbed Nico. Not many of my children can sense the earth so well, the person continued. Percy's eyes widened. Damn it. A woman had appeared in front of him. Percy had seen her before, he was sure, but this was different. No longer was the stranger in a room full of beautiful gods to dilute her effect. Here, Percy could only focus on her. Her power seemed to fill the air, making him oddly hungry and full at once. Her hair was golden, cascading down her back, with eyes the color of rich soil. Nico waved. Hi, Mom. Nico, Demeter greeted with a warm smile. I heard you had disappeared from camp, she mused, and her eyes snapped at Percy. I had wondered why. Oh, Nico said, and Percy was about to panic when Nico gave a bright smile. Mr. D told me to. Wait, what? Dionysus told you to leave camp, Demeter asked with heavy surprise. Nico laughed. Well, not exactly, he said. He said he would give me 2 drachmas if I spied on Castor and Percy. Only Percy and Castor left to find Pollux and Grover, but I can't spy on them if they aren't at camp. So I followed, he said. Percy had to fight not to show his surprise. Clever, 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 Nico. The kid had no idea what was going on, but somehow had the survival instincts to keep them out of trouble. Outstanding. Demeter said and waved her hand. Why don't you sit down and eat, hon? I need to speak to your friends. Okay, Nico said, and then frowned at the cereal set out. He looked around. Do you have Captain Crunch? He asked hopefully. Demeter blinked. Do I? That's full of sugar. Try this instead. It's whole grain and much healthier, she said with a nod towards the bowl. Nico looked down at it with a frown. But Captain Crunch has a pirate on it. I don't think that's a pirate, Costa said. He looks like a naval officer. Nobody asked you, Castor, Nico said loudly and scowled. You sound like William, he added under his breath. Demeter tilted her head. Who is William? My mortal enemy. He tricked me into eating a Twinkie, Nico said solemnly. Could you destroy him? He asked, a voice with way too much hope for someone who just asked for destruction. Demeter didn't appear to know what to say to that. Percy didn't blame her. So instead, she merely kissed his head and then turned to where Percy and Castor were. Walk with me, she instructed them, and led them down one of the paths between the stalks of wheat. Percy and Castor hesitantly followed. You know, she began, smoothing out her dress. In the past, I've been accused of being absent-minded. They say that is how I lost Persephone, after all, she told them darkly, and her eyes glinted with a danger that made Percy nervous. But it serves me well. I tend to be forgotten for what I truly am. The power I truly wield, she said. Percy jutted out his chin. Why have you come here, Lady Demeter? Demeter smiled tiredly. I'm said to be absent-minded, she repeated, fingers running over some wheat beside her. So I understand why you and your sister used heavy-handed methods with Bianca and Nico, she explained softly. If they are, indeed, my children. You're not sure? Percy asked dryly. He was trying for lofty and uncaring, rather than the pure panic he felt. Demeter smiled. I suppose you really have been preoccupied with Persephone all these years. Well, you seem very sure for me, she said, and looked through the plants, back to where Nico was frowning at some wheat withered lifelessly next to him. He appears to be a child of my darker form, she mused, then pursed her lips. I am not a fool, Percy Jackson, she said quietly, though I played well. Do you know what the line in the prophecy actually is? She asked him. Percy glanced at Castor, who only shook his head. A half-blood of the eldest gods, she recited and chuckled. My brothers are always so limited in their sight. They think only of themselves, she said with a shake of her head. Was I not born before Hades, Poseidon, or Zeus? Percy stared. But nobody thinks of me, do they? Not with my absent-minded nature, she hummed and offered a wry smile. I saw what they did to their own children when they became a threat. I could not allow them to do the same to mine. Do you think it could be one of your children who is the prophecy child? Costa asked. Nico was now trying to make himself a wheat crown of some sort, but was getting irritated by the plants dying at his touch. Demeter waved her hand, and they sprang back to life. She gave Percy and Costa a bitter smile. I cannot be certain. I would not be surprised if the fates forgot me too, she said, and took a long breath. I suppose we will find out soon enough, won't we? Though, she shrugged off, then smiled. You're getting older as well, aren't you? She asked Percy. He had to fight to make sure the blood didn't drain away from his face. I'm the son of Aphrodite. Oh, that is most certainly true, Demeter nodded, and clasped her hands together. Did you know Aphrodite predates the Olympians? Of course, your brother and sister are 16, aren't they? So the prophecy mustn't mean her, she said, and leaned in as if to hug him. Perhaps, little hero. The prophecy means the half-blood of 2 of the eldest gods, if you know what I mean, she said, breath suspiciously cool against his neck. Percy felt his blood grow just as cold. For someone who pretends to be a fool, you claim to know an awful lot, he managed, voice tight. Demeter chuckled and patted his cheek. I do not agree with killing children. However, I am not the kind of mother to put her own children at risk by speaking out of turn, she said, and looked back at Nico. I know what he and his sister are. Still, I claim them, and so they are mine. I will continue to turn a blind eye, she said, and tilted her head, with the understanding that to keep my children alive and well. What do you mean? I mean that if a single drop of blood from my children spills, I will reveal all I know, Demeter said quietly, and I will use your blood to create a lovely round of crops from all of us to feast on, she said, and gripped his hand as if this was a benign reassurance. So perhaps you would do better to stop orchestrating and go back to playing a fool as well. You're much better at it, she said. Percy looked away. Ouch. Have you known all along? He breathed out, praying only she could hear. Demeter chuckled. You would do well to remember Hades suspected you in the beginning, my dear. He may have relented after Aphrodite's insistence, but I kept watching, she said, and tapped the end of her nose. And no, your pretty goddess mother doesn't know. Neither does any other Olympian. Not for certain, anyway. Keep up this recklessness, and that may change, though, she said, and stepped back. Nico, she called, a voice flipping like a switch. I have a gift for you, she sang, and spun around. Nico perked up as he scrambled over to her. Demeter's face softened as a flower appeared in her hand. Pretty, Nico told her. Demeter's eyes lost their edge, and she ran a finger over his cheek. You are very sweet, aren't you? She sighed, and placed the flower in his hand. This flower belongs to your sister. Her name is Persephone, she said, and stood back up. If you need a quick escape, maybe ask her for help, she said, and looked over at where Percy was still standing, then to where Castor had gone very, very quiet, almost too quiet. Be good, work hard, train well. Listen to Percy and Castor, she told him, and kissed the top of his head. Castor too? Nika asked, unenthused. Percy rolled his eyes, but when he turned to Castor, he didn't seem as exasperated. Instead, he was staring at Percy in a way he didn't like. What? Percy asked. You okay? What did she whisper to you? He asked. Percy blinked. Just now, she whispered something to you. Oh, he said, and rubbed the back of his neck. Just threats about what would happen if her kids were hurt. Fun gotta stuff, he said, and turned when he felt the light dim, taking Demeter as well. Castor nodded slowly before turning to where Nico was putting the flower in his backpack and walking over. We should go, he said, and then wrinkled his nose. I had to lie, he said uncertainly, about me following you. Was I supposed to do that? He asked. Percy smiled weakly. Now that it was clear how much Demeter knew, it didn't matter much, but he was reassured that Nico had an accurate assessment of the situation. You did a great job, Percy told him, and ruffled his hair. Come on, we should keep moving, he said, and led them back through the wooden arch behind them. When they walked through again, they were once more in the never-ending twists and turns of the labyrinth. A few monsters came for them, but they were run-of-the-mill sort, nothing too concerning. Not compared to Nico's incessant line of questioning. How are we going to fix my arm? He asked, as Percy stabbed through a harpy and continued down a narrowing tunnel before it twisted into something much wider. Have a friend, Percy repeated. He glanced down at his own arm. So they had to know he was to mark you. Does that mean anyone could be marked, and it was simply Big Three kids targeted? Who could do that? How? Why? He rubbed his temple before collapsing against a wall to catch his breath. Nico knelt beside him as Castor rummaged through the bags to hand out water. Are all ghosts bad? He asked, poking Percy's knee. Should I ignore the other one trying to talk to me? He whispered. Percy paused. There's another ghost trying to talk to you? He asked. Nico nodded. The actual... He looked up at where Castor had paused in uncapping a water bottle. Why is this the first we're hearing about this? Castor asked. Nico shrugged and looked down at the ground, wringing his hands together. How long has this been going on? Who is it? Where? He asked, voice rising with frustration. Nico muttered a response. Castor threw the water to the side, taking a few steps away. Right, Percy inwardly scolded himself. He had been so concerned with getting Nico to safety, he had forgotten the weighing pressure of Pollux being missing. Grimacing, he reached out to put a hand on his shoulder before turning back to Nico. Can you tell it to show itself? I think the ghost will listen to you, he said, trying his best to remain calm. Gods, he wanted Bianca here. Nico frowned, but looked around at the emptiness of the maze before taking a long breath. Why would it listen to me? He asked, but Percy only gave him an attempt at a smile. Okay. Show yourself, he said, voice surprisingly firm and filled with something that had Percy reconsidering exactly how helpless Nico really was. The air bubbled for a moment, and there was a wisp of white. When Percy looked up again, there was a woman. She looked maybe in her 20s, wearing a purple peplus. Yes, that is the proper term. He was raised in the Aphrodite cabin. He knew the difference between a chiton and a peplus, and a hematon. Thank you very much. And black hair piled up on the back of her hair with gold. She looked washed out, as all ghosts do, but Percy could still tell she was absolutely beautiful. My lord, the ghost greeted and bowed her head. Nico looked over her shoulder before realizing she was talking to him. Oh, I'm Nico, he said and waved. Percy smiled. Why are you following me? I only wish to help you, little lord. I'm very big, thank you, Nico said. Percy put his hand on Nico's shoulder as he stepped forward, looking the woman over cautiously. Hi, he said. I'm Percy. This is Costa and Nico, he explained, and the woman nodded. Who are you? He asked. The woman hesitated. I cannot tell you. Melanie has joined the side of the Titans, she explained. Percy's brows furrowed. She is the goddess of ghosts and has forbidden us to aid you. I had hoped that perhaps the young lord could overpower her, but I fear he doesn't understand his powers yet, she said regretfully. Nico frowned. So for now, I can only give vague warnings, she said, and held out her arms. Percy stiffened. You are a big 3 child? He asked, as he looked down to see a familiar marking on her arm. The ghost shook her head. Then why do you have that? He asked, and then looked her up and down. You're dressed like someone who came from ancient Greece, he said. Why would you have that? He asked her. She lowered her arm, placing a hand over the wound because, yes, Percy realized it was, in fact, a wound. He could see blood trailing out the longer they spoke. I was the first to bear this mark. There were others. In my neck and heart and head, she said. Nico's eyes widened. But this was the first. It struck me suddenly and painfully. It became a symbol of sorts. Whatever happens in your mortal life is immortalized once you become a god, he said wistfully, repeating Pollux's earlier words. Percy opened his mouth to ask for more details when a sudden click snapped at the back of his mind. He thought to Zoe and Selena, and now to this woman. She smiled at him. Why would he do this? Percy whispered. Why? The ghost might have answered, but was interrupted by a low rumbling. Dust rose from the walls as the walls seemed to shift. Castor grabbed Nico, stepping closer to Nico to keep from being separated. A roar sounded off in the distance. Fun fact about Daedalus's infamous labyrinth: it sucked. It was confusing with shifting. It was confusing with shifting its walls, narrowing its passageways, and pop-out entrances and exits. At one point, they found themselves in Octraz with Cronus' prisoners. Percy had to clean some stables, thankfully out of the prying eyes of others, for some guy named Gayron. Percy was actually a little pleased to have an excuse to dabble in his water powers. They felt so much more natural and effortless. However, it was the next trial that appeared to be the hardest. Left, no, right, Costa murmured to him, and then narrowed his eyes. Dennis smiled. It was a cold, horrible smile that reminded Percy too much of the version he had seen in his dream. Seeing him holding down Evelyn as they murdered those kids. You could barely look at either of his faces. There's got to be a way to tell, right? Can we knock? Nico asked. Dennis frowned at him. He said, and then furrowed his brows. Huh. Nobody had asked me about that before. I don't see the harm, he said, though he looked a smidge uncertain. Nico beamed and rushed over to knock on the first door. When nothing happened, he went to the next door and knocked. This time, something knocked back. Nico stared, clearly stunned, before turning back to Costa and Percy. Is that good or a bad sign? He asked, and then rubbed his arm. I don't feel good, he sighed, and dragged his feet back over to them. Percy put a hand on his forehead. Damn it. It was getting warmer. My head hurts, he whispered. I know, Percy said, and looked between the 2 doors again. We're going to get you some help, he said, watching Janice carefully. He wasn't suspicious, was he? Nico could be sick by any number of things. We just need a peck. Percy sighed, and looked between the 2 again. We'll go with... The left door opened, which was a little funny because Nico and Costa both screamed and jumped behind Janice, who also looked suitably alarmed. The door swung back to reveal Evelyn stepping through with a blue spool of thread in her hand. "Hi," she greeted and raised the thread. "Sorry it took so long. The damn thing gets tangled constantly," she grumbled and let her hand flick over the room. "Janice?" She offered a tight smile. "What a lovely surprise," she said, and then knelt a little. "Hello, Nico," she said, stepping through the door into the tiled room. Nico peered out from behind Costa. "Do you remember me? It's been a long time." Nico stared. You were Hugo's girlfriend," he said. Evelyn's smile widened. "You sang us a song." "That's right," she said and held up the thread. "I've come to take you someplace safe until you feel better." Nico looked at her uncertainly before turning to look at Percy. Right. He only knew her as Hugo's girlfriend. He had no idea she was Poseidon's daughter. He tried his best to smile reassuringly. Janice was spluttering behind them. All four eyes bugged out. "You can't." "Nemesis and I need your help with something," Evelyn interrupted him. "Under certain orders." She smiled. Percy looked between them. He wasn't sure he liked how she said that, but also couldn't bring himself to care, given the circumstances. The maid shook again. "Come on, we have to go," she said, and held out her hand. Costa frowned. "I need to find my brother," he said. Evelyn nodded. "We'll look for him as soon as Nico is feeling better," she said. Costa didn't look thrilled by this, but gave a curt nod nevertheless. The room shuddered. "Evelyn," Percy called and shoved Nico towards her. "Take him and run. Heal him," he said, and looked around. "I know who's doing this. I need to go to the gods." "Costa, do you want to—" "To the gods," Evelyn repeated as she looked around. "Percy, even if you did know, that's dangerous." "Can you take me there?" he asked. Evelyn opened her mouth, perhaps to answer, but the maze gave a screech of objection, tilting the entire room. Janice disappeared in a poof of mist. Percy reached out to grab something, but he found himself slammed against one of the doors. There was a scream of some sort as the entire room seemed to crumble into pieces. "Cass?" he shouted, looking around as dust rose. "Evelyn? Nico?" Nobody answered. What had happened? A crack sounded, and suddenly rocks fell from somewhere, collapsing onto Percy's leg. He cried out in pain before taking a deep breath. They weren't large, but the pain shooting up his side wanted to argue otherwise. Gathering all his strength, he sat up and shoved the mini boulder off of him. "Costa!" he yelled and stumbled up. He hated this damn maze. Looking around, he wiped some blood off his chin before looking around. It looked as if he was back in the labyrinth, alone. "Nico!" he tried. Nothing. Great. What could he even do? Wander? Bring out Riptide? He held the sword out as he rounded some corners with a new limp. From somewhere in the distance, he heard a growl. Not good. Maybe he shouldn't be going around shouting. This was reaffirmed by a roar and flash of gold appearing. Percy sighed. "You again?" he asked as the Minotaur snorted, pawing at the ground beneath him. "I was just touring your lovely home," Percy said, and lifted his sword. "Could you point me to the bathroom?" he asked. The Minotaur, still, did not have a sense of humor. Figures. It roared, charging forward with a wild gleam in its eyes. Percy braced himself. In the narrowed walls of the labyrinth, there was nowhere to dodge. He decided to go with his old trick of sliding underneath, since it worked so well last time. The Minotaur kicked back, snarling as it ran directly into a wall. Dumbass. He regretted the comment when it ripped itself out and charged again. This time, Percy jumped up, striking Riptide down with a flourish so that he burst into a shower of gold. "Bullseye," he said and snorted. Alright, that was kind of stupid. Stupid, but he still enjoyed it. Ignoring his leg throbbing, he wiped the dust from his eyes and looked curiously at where the hole the Minotaur had put into the wall was slowly righting itself. Figuring he saw no other doors or exits, he raced forward to jump through the hole before it could close up. There was a sharp hiss there as he fell, accidentally colliding a bit with the wall, so more dust and stone fell with him. Ouch. He rubbed his shoulder, standing up to see what corner of hell he ended up in this time. His leg jerked in protest. Next, the DMV. Percy wasn't sure what he even expected anymore. A few mortals were looking at him curiously, but nobody dared to move to get out of line. Percy looked behind him to see a good-sized hole in the wall and nodded. Right, sure. He looked around, expecting police or some sort of employee to start freaking out, but it appeared either the mist was hard at work or that nobody cared much for their jobs. Probably both. Is this like a habit for you or something? Rachel? Percy blinked. Sure enough, behind a guy wearing a horrifying neon suit was Rachel Elizabeth Day, with some paperwork in her hand. What are you doing here? I just took my driver's test, so I'm getting my license finalized, Rachel said, and looked him up and down, and then to the wall he had busted through. Same for you? It's kind of a long story, he said, and rubbed the back of his neck. Do you need. You need to the Empire State Building, though, he said, biting his lip. He wanted to search for Costa and Nico, but honestly, taking care of his new best friend and worst enemy was probably the surest way to help Nico stay sane. Rachel nodded, pulling out a piece of gum and offering to him. Well, do you need a ride? Percy liked Rachel. She thought he was weird as hell, but didn't ask questions. Well, she did, but the questions were so casual and matter of fact that he almost didn't believe she fully accepted what he was saying. It was kind of bewildering to throw a "hey, so gods exist" during a car ride, but for some reason it was one of the easier things Percy had done in his life. And so are you what God? Rachel frowned as she drummed her hands on the steering wheel. New York traffic. Objectively the worst. Which God? Percy laughed. Oh, the irony. Aphrodite. Now it was Rachel's turn to laugh, though Percy wasn't sure why. Of course you are, she said. Percy's brows came together. Was that a jab? He couldn't tell. That explains some stuff. What stuff? Percy asked indignantly. It explains nothing, he said. Rachel shrugged. Whatever, he sighed and ran his hand through his hair. Have you met your mom? Oh, yeah. The last time I saw her, she was pissed at me, he said, with a shake of his head. I made sure to pray to her twice before entering the maze this time. And I've given her like 4 offerings. I haven't heard anything, so that might be a good sign. She's not someone you want angry at you, he shuddered, thinking of the threat in her eyes when she looked at them all last year. But she's normally pretty nice. Sometimes she sends me stuff, he said, yanking on the end of his shirt. That's so weird. What does she look like? Changes, Percy shrugged. Generally to whatever you think is attractive, he explained, and fidgeted some more. What's with all the painting supplies? He asked, looking over her shoulder to where canvases and paint cans littered the back seat. Are you making a mural? Oh, I wish, Rachel snorted. No, I'm just painting my room. Though a mural isn't a bad idea, she mused. Maybe I can put something on the back wall, she said, and honked her horn when someone cut her off. Idiot, she muttered with a roll of her eyes. You just need to drop me off, right? You just need me to drop you off, right? Yeah, Olympus is on the top floor, he said. Rachel slowly turned to him. Yeah, I was surprised too, he said, and unlocked the door as she pulled to the side. He could see the building from here and got the feeling that it was as close as he was going to get with this traffic. Thank you so much, he added to her. Are you on? Buy me dinner and we'll call it even. Percy paused. Do you mean like... he began and then narrowed his eyes. My boyfriend says you like me. I can't tell. Is your boyfriend the blonde guy from when we blew up the school? She asked. Percy nodded. And he could tell that I liked you? She asked. Not upset, just amused. Percy shrugged. But you are unsure, she clarified. Percy shrugged again. Well, if you have a boyfriend, I amend my dinner invitation to instead just hanging out as friends, she said, and reached over to pat his arm. And as a child of Aphrodite, it might be best for you to assume everyone likes you to some extent. Percy grumbled. That's not true. Uh-huh. It was nice to you. It was nice seeing you again, Percy. Good luck with the gods, she said, and Percy opened the door with a sarcastic wave. Rachel laughed. It softened him slightly. Thanks again, he told her. We should hang out. Bring your boyfriend, Rachel said. I think he and I may get along. Absolutely not, Percy decided, and closed the door before she could tease him more. Right. Nice, relaxing drive with no monsters. That must mean his luck was running out. It would be any second before something disastrous happened. Taking a deep breath, he marched over to the front door and walked inside. The receptionist looked up at him and made a face. Can I help you? I need to get to Olympus. No such place. Look at me, Percy interrupted, with a wave up and down. I'm wearing a Camp Half-Blood shirt. My sword is out. I'm covered in blood and monster dust. You think I would believe there is no Olympus? He asked. The receptionist looked at him before shrugging. Do you have an appointment? Percy closed his eyes. Funnily enough, I did not have the time to make one. However, I have an excellent set of lungs and no pride. I can and will start screaming and making a scene until monsters come and cause all sorts of fun chaos, he said. The reception considered this for a brief second and then wordlessly handed him the key. Thank you. Jeez, the nerve of some people. His next surprise came shortly after he stepped out of the elevator to see a bunch of girls dressed in silver. Bianca! He shouted, and momentarily forgot why he even came as he pushed some people out of the way towards where Bianca was in a serious discussion of some sort with a red-headed girl. He reached out and gripped her into a tight hug. Thank gods, where have you been? I tried to message you, he said, pulling away. Why are you here? How? I started and then shook his head. How? He repeated. Bianca reared back. What happened to you? Daedalus's labyrinth, he muttered with a shake of his head, and pulled her to the side to quickly relay everything that had happened, including with Nico. He's with Evelyn now, so I think he has time, but I need to talk to the gods, so they know who it is and how to stop it, he said. Bianca nodded curtly. She looked over her shoulder and then towards the entrance to the throne room. Well, you picked a good time, she said evenly. Zeus called everyone for a meeting about the labyrinth. Lady Artemis says he's worried Cronus' army may be using it for more than a camp invasion, she explained. I don't know what. They won't let us in. Artemis was going to let us keep hunting, but I guess she's worried that the maids might suck us in or something. It has been acting weird, Percy agreed. Annabeth said Daedalus is the only one to control it. He could be on the Titan side. That would explain why they're so worried, Percy agreed. Have you heard from her at all, Annabeth? The last time I saw her, the Treywolf. Bianca shook her head. Never mind. He shook his head before glancing up at the door to the throne room. He stared. There was a daunting chill as he looked up at it. All he could think about was Evelyn's memory, the awful, horrible things that had gone in those halls. Come with me? He asked her. Bianca smiled. Sounds better than waiting out here, she said, and then looked over her shoulder. Gather your weapons. We're going inside. She called and turned back to Percy. Just in case you need witnesses, she added. Percy snorted. Witnesses? He wasn't sure he needed any. It wasn't like anything could be done if they killed him. Gods weren't held accountable, as much as they should be. Thanks, Bianca, he said. And Nico will be okay. Her smile flickered. Well, she said, and then pasted on another, much more forced smile. Hopefully this will fix everything. Hopefully it would. Still, he had some doubts as he walked forward and knocked on the door. Ah, someone's voice from inside. Percy Jackson decided to pay us a visit. Father, shall he enter? He was murmuring. Enter, Zeus's voice called, and the door slammed back. Percy gave Bianca one last glance before walking in, bracing himself for whatever came next. He needed this to be over quick. He had to find Castor, Grover, Pollux, and Nico. He had so many people he needed to make sure were safe. Maybe the gods would help him with that too. He stepped inside to find a setup similar to the winter solstice meeting. Bianca was right. Whatever they were discussing was important enough to have included everyone, aside from Hades. Percy's eyes first drifted to Aphrodite. She was wearing a sort of medieval gown with trumpet sleeves and gold trim. He offered her a weak smile before bowing his head. When he looked back up, she narrowed her eyes for a moment before she sighed, though he could see her lips twitch up. Hello, my son, she spoke first. I see you've been questing once more. I hope you got my prayers? I did, she confirmed and shook her head. You know, I would be most displeased if you died an early death, Perseus. Perhaps try to spend a summer without a dangling sword over your head, she said, and then raised her hands. But alas, what do I know? I am but a mere goddess, she said. Percy back a smile. What can I say? I follow my heart, he told her. Aphrodite scoffed, but gestured him to the rest of the council. He turned to where Zeus was watching him with very clear annoyance. Wordlessly he knelt. Speak, child. Tell us why you barged onto Olympus and interrupted our conversation with Artemis. Why are they here? He asked with a nod towards Bianca and the others. Artemis pursed her lips. If they wish to stay, they may stay, she said, voice somewhere between calm and annoyed. Zeus fixed her with a stare, to which she returned with equal force. Apollo shifted uncomfortably, hand suddenly inching towards his sister. Percy wondered if they had any feelings about that day. Zeus killed his own children so callously. Had his immortal children inwardly mourned? Feared for themselves? Zeus turned away from her. Speak. Percy stepped forward. The gods all watched him. He couldn't decide which he disliked the most. It felt as though he had seen so many sides to all of them, especially the bad. I know what happened to the 1940s children, he said. There was an inaudible murmur. They were targeted. There is a god out there who specifically affects certain heroes and drives them to the brink of insanity, he said. Another murmur. For immortalized beings, their mortal life reflects their godly powers, and there is only one god who would have control over heroes and sanity, he said, turning his eyes pointedly to Hera. She put a finger over her lips in deep thought before a ghost of a smile hinted. You hear that, husband? She asked. I am not the only one who holds ire towards your son. Zeus did not look nearly as amused. Speak the name plainly, boy, he said, through gritted teeth. If you make an accusation, then be bold enough to. Heracles, Percy interrupted flatly. He's the one who was turned against you. How dare you? It is well known that Lady Hera drove him insane to kill his own wife and children, Percy continued loudly. He would be heard at, if nothing else. As a god of heroes, he would have a certain amount of sway over demigods. I met the ghost of Megara myself, and there was the same mark on her arm that the other Kataras had. It is the mark of Heracles' first arrow hitting her, a sign of his insanity. Enough, Zeus said. I will not hear this blasphemy of my own child. And what of your other children? Percy demanded. The ones he has gotten killed? Perseus? Aphrodite cut in with a worried look toward Zeus. She took a long breath. My lord, he does bring evidence? What evidence? Hera asked. This is all conjecture. There are none here that particularly like Heracles. Hera? What? She asked and gestured around. My son has had a quarrel with him. So have I. I know Artemis was no fan, she said, and Percy flicked his eyes to where Artemis was watching Percy carefully, tapping her fingers against the arm of her chair. But that does not make him bold enough to be a traitor, nor as powerful, she reasoned. Artemis glanced at her. Perhaps you are so resistant to the idea, my queen, because you take pride in knowing that you have broken him after these immortal years. Him being a traitor negates that. My son is not a traitor, Zeus snapped. Zoe had figured it out too, Percy began, but was cut off by a sharp round of laughs. Ah, of course, Ares said. Artemis's little pet would seek her vengeance through false accusations, wouldn't she? He asked and pointed a finger at Percy. You almost had me on board, punk, he said. I never liked the guy. But Zoe, the nightshade, is the opposite of a reliable source, he scoffed. Percy glanced towards where the hunters were standing, impassive until this point. A few muttered lowly with glares at Ares, while others whispered amongst one another. Artemis shot Ares a dark look. Do not dishonor her memory like that, she said. Whatever other defense she might have had was cut off by the gods speaking at once. I think this is a cry of attention, Dionysus said blandly. Aphrodite, has your son not been receiving enough attention? We have no Kataras in our midst, and yet he decides to unravel a mystery that does not pertain to him? Evelyn Lawrence is alive and well, Percy objected, and she is a powerful demigod seeking revenge for what you've done to her and her siblings. Maybe if you punish the god responsible, then she might forgive you and switch away from the Titans. Forgive us! Zeus roared and slammed his hand so the entire room shook. You come here and slander my son's name to ask for some whelp's forgiveness after all the wrong she has done? Percy felt his own indignation rise. He quickly tempered himself, looking away to keep from snapping back. As it was, Zeus was probably about to order his death by the looks of things. Easy, brother, Demeter cut in. I do not think this demigod would make this accusation lightly. I'm willing to give him a shot, Apollo interrupted with a quick glance towards his father. Have my brother brought in, he said, and cringed slightly when Zeus turned his eyes to him. Father, it is the quickest way to lay this to rest, he said, voice almost gentle. Percy's mouth dropped. You are just going to ask him? A lie, he said, and there was a burst beside him. Aphrodite gasped, sitting up, but the bolt of lightning had struck beside Percy, leaving a charred space next to him. My lord, Aphrodite said tightly, and her fingers dug into the arms of her throne. You dare... You ought to remember who was king, Aphrodite. Zeus cut in coldly. If I choose to blast the boy to pieces, then you accept it, and perhaps warn your children to be better. Poseidon laughed. Percy had almost forgotten him. Despite his seat right next to Zeus, he also looked tense, though Percy could tell the silence was killing him. Ah, brother, perhaps this is what our father is counting on, he said and tilted his head. You take such pride in your most renowned child that You turn blind that he is bitter and angry, he said. Why would he not turn against us, after all the pain Hera has caused him? He did not ask to be immortal. You did that yourself out of vanity. Ooh. Percy almost took a step back. The room had gone eerily quiet. Zeus's temper was renowned for being short, and Percy was certain that it had been crossed. The air crackled with something Percy didn't care to identify, as Zeus turned to look at his brother's face on. Before he could respond, there was the sound of a door creaking, and the next thing Percy knew, someone was next to him. I've been summoned, father? Percy blanched. The damned devil himself. He turned, not entirely sure what to expect when he looked. The guard next to him was huge, with cropped black hair and a well-trimmed beard. He turned his eyes to Percy, the same haunting electric blue Thalia's had been, and smiled. A wave of hatred came over him. That smile alone felt like all the confirmation Percy needed as Heracles bowed his head. My son, Zeus greeted stiffly. Grave accusations have been risen against you. It has been requested you defend yourself. Heracles gave a downright alarmed expression before looking around with far too much innocence. What wrong has been accused of me? I think you know, Percy said coolly. Heracles turned to him and tilted his head. I don't believe we've met, young hero. Though, oh, don't tell me. I'm quite good at this. He snapped his fingers. Percy Jackson, right? Impressive, Percy told him, deeply unimpressed. Should I do you? He said, voiced almost mockingly as he snapped his fingers. Heracles. Hercules, actually, he corrected. Percy raised an eyebrow. Heracles is my given Greek name. I have never preferred it, he said distastefully, as he looked pointedly at Hera. It is for my stepmother, who I, of course, honor, but I do like how the Romans renamed me. He smiled pleasantly. Well, Mr. Jackson, I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. I'm the god of heroes, you know. Perhaps I've aided you in a quest of some sort? He smiled. Oh, Percy hated him. Trust me, Percy said darkly. I know exactly what you are. Enough, Zeus said coldly. Percy bit his tongue. My child, you are aware of the unfortunate sickness that spread over our children 50 years ago? He asked. Heracles gave a grave nod. Perseus believes you have something to do with it. That it is your mark that bores on them before they are brought to the brink of madness, and that you have chosen Cronus over your own father, he said with a lot of nerve from someone who literally fought his own father. Heracles blinked a few times before frowning. No, he said. Father, I would never. During my mortal life, I fought giants and monsters in honor of the gods. You also fought gods, if I remember correctly, Artemis cut in. Apollo and Ares among them. I won, Apollo said, and Heracles lifted a brow. The second time I won, he murmured. Ares muttered something similar as Heracles gave a boisterous laugh. A friendly spar between brothers, he said loudly. Surely you can understand craving our father's approval, he asked, and crossed his arms over his chest. Percy glanced at Bianca. Did she see this? Her eyes were narrowed, fixed on Heracles with just as much suspicion as he had. Good. Is this a prank of yours, brother? He asked, turning to Hermes. Another amusing jibe? He smiled. Ugh. I'm not sure Hermes' words on this matter should be heeded, Hephaestus murmured. His own son being a traitor and all, he said. Hermes' eyes flashed, said nothing as he looked at him. See? Zeus asked, looking around. Percy scoffed. He wasn't serious, was he? Before he could voice another, and perhaps his very last, objection, Athena cleared her throat. I may, she asked. Oh, great. Percy prepared himself as Athena interlaced her fingers together. Grey eyes whipped across the room before landing on Percy. I do wonder about Perseus's role in all of this, she said, voice careful and deliberate. He was friends with the Thalia Grace girl, and now concerned himself over Evelyn Laurent, she said. However, I don't quite understand his knowledge. How do you know of the markings? She asked. Thalia Grace never had one. Have you been in touch with Evelyn Laurent? She asked. Percy pursed his lips. No, but I've had dreams. Dreams, Athena cut in. Yes. Is it possible these dreams could hold lies? Kronos can manipulate such things, especially now that Dionysus has confirmed that Morpheus may be on the Titan side of things, she said. Percy looked away. So perhaps it is Kronos who seeks to turn us against one another? Starting with Hercules, she corrected herself with a nod. Hercules beamed. However, it is a strange first enemy to make, she said, and leaned forward. And how did you speak to this ghost you mentioned? You cannot summon ghosts as a child of Aphrodite, can you? Percy closed his eyes. I sought her out. How? What ghost? Heracles cut in. Percy turned to look at him for a few seconds. Megara, your first wife, he said, and offered a wry smile. She told me about how you killed her, he said quietly. Heracles' fingers twitched. She would never speak against me, he said coldly. Never. I don't know, Heracles, Percy said with a certain amount of malice in the name. People tend to change their tune after their children are murdered. Well, some people, he added to himself silently. Heracles bristled as he looked at Percy with the first real hint of irritation in his eyes. Percy felt a warmth on his arm. He looked down just in time to see a red mark glimmer on the surface for a moment before disappearing again. A warning. Percy's jaw clenched. Why big 3 kids? He asked as he leaned in. You can clearly mark any hero. I don't know what you're talking about. Enough, Zeus called. There are too many holes in this story. I will not condemn my son on the basis of a dead hunter girl's claim and amateur detective work, he decided. As it is, he began, but fell silent when a loud bang went through the hall. Percy glanced around. Sure, it had been one of the gods, but they all looked at one another with varying levels of confusion. Heracles paused, hand raising slightly. I feel a presence, he said slowly, and looked over his shoulder. Aunt? He asked, turning to Demeter, who slowly nodded. There is someone in the garden. Zeus slammed his hand down. After we had guarded it? He hissed and stood up, sending most of the room scrambling back. There is to be a severe punishment for those who let another in. As it is, we might have to destroy it. Destroy it? Demeter frowned. What of all the children who... They are posing more of a risk than a benefit at this point, Zeus said. It is either that, or we release them all. For right now, there is little time to debate. All of you, come. We must catch this intruder and ensure nobody else leaves, he said. Percy said nothing. He was surprised it took Zeus this long to think of mass murder, quite frankly. Hades went like that, Poseidon frowned. You promised you wouldn't touch... And I also promised I wouldn't touch your girl, and look at what happened, Zeus snapped. She is out wreaking havoc and demanding apologies, he said, and his eyes fell onto Percy. Percy stared right back. If he was going to kill him, he would look right into his eyes. Zeus, Aphrodite's voice spoke, sharp. I respect your anger and authority. You and I have always had a respect for one another, she added. Percy blinked. Had they? He never really thought about it, but, Strangely enough, Zeus and Aphrodite were both 2 of the most renowned gods to go about having affairs with almost everyone, yet he wasn't aware of any children they had together. We made our agreement long ago, Aphrodite continued, ignoring everyone else. I kept my end of things. Agreement? Harris asked sharply. What agreement? It is nothing. It is nothing, Zeus said, without tearing his eyes off of Percy. We must go, he said, and with a flash he was gone. Aphrodite breathed deeply. Percy looked at her as the others began to zap away, but was distracted by Athena shrinking down next to him. He jumped when she put a hand on his shoulder. Apollo is also the god of truth, she told him quietly. If you are looking for an ally, just beware. He will sense many lies, she said, cryptically, before disappearing again. Percy slowly processed that. Was she trying to help him? After dismissing him so blatantly? He turned to where Aphrodite was still waiting. Mother, he began and bit his lip. Whoever is in the garden. Would you happen to know who it is? She asked, suddenly in front of him in her human-sized form. Percy looked at her. Aphrodite pulled out something from her dress. The bottle that had once held the perfume she had given him 2 years ago. Percy closed his eyes. I found this the night Poseidon's girl came back. Only you were with us, so I know it wasn't you, she said, and raised an eyebrow. Percy looked away. I left an escape route, Aphrodite told him quietly. Percy's eyes snapped back. What? I am a creature guided by love, she said, and placed a hand under his chin. And love sometimes makes us fools. But I cannot keep doing this. Long ago, I told Zeus I would never defy him in council if he allowed my children long and happy lives. You pushed that agreement, my darling. You and Selena both. You believe me, right? About Heracles? He asked. Aphrodite closed her eyes. Mom, innocent people are dying. People I love, he said. All of you. I see it in all of you. Everyone here wants to do the right thing. At least a little bit. Everyone but him. Percy, she began, and leaned forward to kiss his forehead. I need to go. To make sure they don't find anything. Please, please stay safe, she said, and stepped away. Percy opened his mouth to call her back, but she had already disappeared in a splash of sparkles. He groaned. Damn it. Damn it. Bianca walked over to him. Percy tried to shove away his anger to make way for guilt. I'm so sorry, he said. I'm going to find another way to make this right. I don't know what to do, he admitted. Maybe Evelyn has the right idea in trying to get rid of all of them, he said quietly. I just don't think she'll win. Bianca looked at him. Technically, he knew she hadn't physically changed, but at the same time, he felt there were differences. As subtle as they were, she really did look so much like Nico. Slowly, she looked over her shoulder and then drew a long breath before reaching over to grab his hand. That doesn't matter, she said and squeezed. Percy looked at her. I've hidden long enough, I think. This has made me see, she trailed off, and then tugged at her wrist where her archer's glove sat on her right hand. It's time. For what? He asked, though part of him already knew. Bianca, think about this, he began, but Bianca raised her hand. So a piece of stone rose from the ground of the throne room for her to climb on top. Bianca! I have an announcement, Bianca called, and the hunters all were silent. She waited until the rest all turned to her before speaking again, slowly and with so much fear in her voice that she somehow sounded brave to speak at all. You heard what I said. Wait, you heard what I heard. The gods did not take Percy's claims seriously, but I did, she said, and looked them over. They're wrong. They were wrong for hurting those children, for hurting unclaimed demigods now, for not even humoring that they could be wrong, she said. A few hunters muttered amongst one another. What can we do about it? Someone called from the back. Bianca gave a tight smile. I am lieutenant of this hunt, she said, and took a deep breath. It is an honor, but I cannot lead you while pretending I'm something that I'm not. I cannot lead you while lying. Not anymore. My name is Bianca D'Angelo. I am a daughter of Hades. My brother, Nico's identity has been compromised, and now Hercules has marked him, as he marked all those other innocent children, she said. The room went deadly silent. My kind have been hunted and slaughtered for crimes that we did not commit, or were first, or were, or were forced to, she said. Percy felt his blood pressure shoot up. You've heard the gods. They disrespect Zoe and dismiss Artemis's inquiries. I do not believe, after this, that Lady Artemis will stand against her father. Not right now, Bianca said. A few were lightly touching their weapons. Percy brought out Riptide in return. A Katara, one girl called. Even one of you isn't as strong as all of us. Shut up, Hannah, someone called. What does this change, Bianca? Continue hiding. We will not reveal you. Speak for yourself. She is a traitor. You dare question Lady Artemis's right hand? Lady Artemis doesn't know. Bianca cleared her throat. I have no intention of staying. The gods are guilty of many things, but Percy says it is the Titans that Hercules works for. I cannot choose either side. Instead, I would like to create my own side. I plan to take my brother and perhaps Evelyn Laurent. I think there are lots of demigods who find both options unappealing, she said. I'm not saying we will win. I'm not even saying we will survive, but if you would like to follow me there, she shrugged, you would be welcomed. Percy stared. It was so stupid, so naive, so unbelievably reckless. Would Artemis's blessing hold? Of course not. They would all be mortal and abandoned and labeled as traitors by Titans and gods. He couldn't imagine something so ridiculous. And yet, he could think of absolutely nothing he admired more. A red-headed girl stepped forward. Phoebe, Bianca said softly, I know how long you've been by Artemis's side. I don't expect you to, she began, but her voice caught when Phoebe walked to her side. She didn't say a word, but she also didn't have to. Other hunters walked over until they were half and half. Bianca looked absolutely stunned. You should leave before they get back, Percy said. Go to the labyrinth. I can tell Evelyn to find you. Come with us, Bianca said, and hopped down. A few hunters raised their bows at her, but others raised their weapons right back. Bianca glanced between the two before swallowing. Zeus will kill you when he gets back. Or Heracles, she said with a curled lip. If Heracles wants me dead, then I'm screwed anyway. He can mark me just as he can you. Percy shook his head. He still didn't know why he specifically marked the big three kids. Percy was now certain that he could do the same to any hero, which was terrifying. Evelyn said Centaubat heals a mark, at least temporarily. That's what killed Heracles. I'm guessing anything that weakens him would help to heal it. Speaking of which, you realize they will tell the gods who you are, Percy said with a nod towards the other hunters, who were starting to gather around. Hercules will mark you. Not if I get to him first, Bianca said darkly and touched her bow. Come with us, she repeated. We can figure it out together. I don't know who's in the garden. If it's Selena, then I can't leave her, Percy said with a shake of his head. I'll be with you soon enough. Go get Nico, okay? He said and hugged her. You're the bravest person I know, he said, and Bianca shook her head. I don't know about that. Stay safe, she told him and squeezed his arm. They were still hunters, eyeing Bianca, clearly wishing to strike if it weren't for the weapons leveled on them. One was inching towards the door, probably to alert the gods to what was happening. Percy was about to go after her himself when there was a sharp crack. Then, without any warning, the ground caved in. Percy yelped as he slipped across the floor, reaching out to grab something as he felt the rocks tumbling down with him. It was useless, though. More ground gave way so that he went tumbling down and hit something hard. He groaned as the rock spun. Everything around him felt hot, hot with a consistent clanging. Well, 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 someone above him said. Look what we have here. Evelyn? Percy coughed and blinked. What? He frowned as he looked around. Where am I? Where's Bianca? He asked. Evelyn blinked. She was in armor, which was a little strange to see, but it was well fitted and clearly worn in. Percy could see where a trident might have once been carved in, but it was scratched out now. Bianca? Evelyn asked. I don't know. You just fell in. I think the labyrinth is collapsing, she said with a frown as she looked around warily. I'm not sure why, or what's controlling it. Daedalus, perhaps? She mused, and offered him a hand up. You're safe here in any case. This technically isn't a labyrinth. You fell through a doorway through the maze, she shrugged. Percy tried to make sense of it, but his head hurt too badly. Do you need ambrosia? Percy said and looked around. Sure. Where are we? He asked. He was mainly concerned with the group of strangest creatures he had ever seen. A group of huge, seal-like creatures with faces of dogs and human hands, though with incredibly sharp claws. They waddled about, growling and barking as they eyed Evelyn warily while working in the orange glow of lava and fire around them. One of Hephaestus's forges, Evelyn shrugged. We're borrowing it for Cronus's scythe, she said. And Percy whipped around with a sense of horror to see the dog's people very much were making a scythe. Telecans. They're very talented. Made Zeus's bolt. Dad's trident. You know, good resume and all that, she said, and took a few steps to the side. Nico, Percy's here. Nico, Percy's here, she called, and Percy's horror momentarily faded to relief when he saw Nico bothering one of the dog things with endless questions. Percy, he gasped and rushed over. Look, they're making weapons, he said, and started rambling. Percy nodded, though he was quickly growing more restless by the whole situation, especially as they approached a section of the forge that was clearly blocked off. Oh, Nico said when he realized where they were heading. Are you going in there? He asked, clearly disappointed. Evelyn gave him an apologetic smile. Fine, you can let me in though. I could keep a secret, he grumbled, kicking the ground. I know, Evelyn told him and pulled back a black sheet. Don't think of it as a secret. Think of it as a surprise, she said. Nico brightened at that before giving an eager nod and rushing off back to bother more telecans. Secret? Percy asked as he followed her in. Evelyn scoffed. He'll forget about it soon enough and won't even think to ask, she said, and walked over to where a huge bucket was suspended in the air, while, much to Percy's horror, Janice was wrapped in gold chains in a hole below. I didn't think it was appropriate for him to see this. Yet, Evelyn continued, and reached over towards where a pile of bags were, and plucked up some trail mix. She offered some to Percy. No thanks. Evelyn, what is this? He asked, with a pointed look at Janice. Evelyn smiled. An experiment, she said, and leaned back against a rock. Janice, you remember Percy, right? I believe you met him in the maze? She smiled. Both of Janice's faces hissed at her. Ooh, that's not friendly, she sang with a click of her tongue. Bad manners. You stupid little demigod harlot. Harlot, Evelyn snorted. Is it the best you can do? Evelyn, what is this? Percy interrupted again. She glanced at him and sighed. placing her trail mix to the side. Janice, Evelyn said, dusting off her hands, has chosen to side with Kronos in the upcoming war. I figured he could help me. She smiled tightly. After all, I'm sure Kronos would like some ideas on what to do to the Olympians once he has them all subdued. I'm brainstorming. Janice shrieked in outrage, yanking against his chains. Evelyn clicked her tongue. Don't be too upset, Janice. Nemesis was the one who helped me trap you here. You can't do this, he yelled. Our master will be furious. He will punish you both fiercely. Really? Evelyn asked, not sounding at all concerned. She ran a finger over her lips, looking deep in thought. I don't think you should be worrying about my punishment right now, she said softly, and then flicked her wrist. From the bucket above, a single droplet of black liquid fell down and landed directly on Janice's left face. He screamed, making Percy jump at the intensity of it. Basilisk venom, she added. Damn you to Tartarus, Janice wailed, and yanked so hard at the chains that the ground moved. This is cruel, Percy said quietly. Why are you torturing him? Evelyn frowned. He knew the answer, of course. He had seen the dream. Based on her lack of answer, she wasn't about to point out the obvious either. Perhaps you're right, she finally said. Janice looked up with clear relief. Maybe, if I receive some compensation. What do you want? Janice spat at her. For me to beg, ask for your forgiveness, give you my power? He asked. Evelyn let out a snort of amusement. Evelyn let out a sort of amused exhale before sitting on one of the smoother rocks, eyes deep in thought. Fine, I'll beg. Please release me. I will give you any reward. Say their names, Evelyn interrupted. There was a pause. You know what names I mean. Say them, and I'll release you. That should be simple enough, right? She asked, turning to Percy with a slight shrug. He didn't know what to say. Janice's eyes, all four of them, widened. Go on. All of them, Janice asked. Evelyn tilted her head. There was just so many of you. If I dump this entire bucket on you, you won't die, Evelyn said. Gods cannot die. Not easily, at any rate. Not quickly, either. However, they can feel pain. So why don't you imagine what would happen if I poured this entire vat of venom on you and try again, she said, and leaned forward. Who knows how many years it will be before someone pulls you out? I need to talk to you about Heracles, Percy managed, unable to tear himself away from the look of pure fear on Janice's face. Evelyn raised a finger. There was the one girl, Darcy, Janice said. Evelyn waited. Then Jules? Julia, he corrected himself quickly. Your sister, right? And James, he said and swallowed. The Hugo boy, and, Sarah? Vera? He tried? Evelyn didn't respond. Both, maybe. Sarah and Vera. Right? He tried. Credence? A drop of venom fell on Janice's right face, and he wailed. Clarence, Evelyn corrected quietly. Maybe start from the beginning. It was Heracles, Percy said, pushing forward. He is the one putting marks on you. I went to the gods, but they didn't believe me. I know it's him, though. I'm positive. I think that means we can find a cure somehow. Evelyn stopped, eyes flickering to him for a moment, before moving back to Janice. She bit her lip. He's working for the Titans too. I'm sure of it. Evelyn said and nodded. It makes sense, and it would be a good final trigger too, she mused. What do you mean? Well, Kronos has ensured most Big Three kids are under his control. Fair enough. We're all here. Well, most of us, she said with a wry smile. That means he's controlled the prophecy. He also has most of the unclaimed demigods on his side, fear being a good motivator. However, they still have one card up their sleeve when war comes around, she said, and turned to look at Percy fully. Heracles is the god of heroes, right? He can make that mark appear on anyone. So what are the Olympians going to do when their army wakes up with marks on their arms right before battle? She asked. Percy felt as though she had hit him. He isn't a strong god, but he's narrowed down the numbers in Camp Half-Blood enough to pull it off. They'll all freak out and come running to the Titans last minute. Those who don't, well, the gods will be forced to put them down like they did us, she said, and then turned to Janice. Speaking of which, you haven't finished with those names, she added. Janice made a pathetic whimpering noise. I don't remember, he said softly. I'm sorry, he tried. I'm the god of choices, not memory. I don't know what I can do, he said. Evelyn nodded. Percy watched as she seemed to mull this over, yanking at a strand of her hair before answering. Maybe you should have prayed more, she suggested, and clenched her hand into a fist. The venom went tumbling down all in one go. Acting purely on instinct alone, Percy lunged forward and held out both his hands. The venom froze in midair. He stood, momentarily shocked as he looked at where Janice was heaving, to Evelyn blinking in surprise. Huh, she said and nodded. Very good, Percy. That took me years of practice. You just did that on your own? She asked, looking impressed. Percy would have answered, but it felt as though he was physically lifting something, like he was holding up a piece of furniture over his head. Poison is so much harder to manipulate than ocean water, or even just water, she said, and smiled. You are much more powerful than you look, little brother, she told him. Percy should be annoyed she had so casually thrown out his identity as Janice. In the back of his mind, he wondered if she did it on purpose, to ensure Percy didn't try to help him escape. Evelyn, please, he said. This isn't right. I know he's awful, but, he said, a little breathlessly, you... Try shifting the weight, she suggested. Like how you would balance holding it on a tightrope. It's strange, but the action centers you, she said, and made an approving noise when Percy shifted his feet. And I appreciate how kind you are, even to people who may not deserve it, she mused and looked at Janice. Unfortunately, I think you have a choice to make. You like those, right? She added to Janice. Both faces glared. What do you mean? Percy asked her, eyeing the bucket. Could he lift it back inside? It felt impossible. You haven't chosen the Titan side. No, Percy said. And you shouldn't either. Not after what they did. If you can't side with the gods, then go find Bianca. And I might, Evelyn agreed. But I want the Titans and gods to fight. They can at least weaken each other, while the rest of us come up with a plan. So I need that scythe. Percy felt a sudden wave of alarm once the implications of that settled in. You plan to give that to Kronos? I wasn't having it made for me, Evelyn laughed. Though, she clicked her tongue. For another time, perhaps. I'm taking Nico with me, so we can get another round of centaur blood. Does Kronos know what he is? Does Nico? Percy asked, sweat trickling down his face. Evelyn didn't answer, of course. Of course, Kronos said. Heracles would have told him. Even without Heracles, it would be evident that Nico was getting cures for the mark. Did any of the other demigods there know? They couldn't. Could they? His mind was too chaotic to make sense of anything. Evelyn, please don't. You can try and stop me, she said. But you'd have to drop the venom. Why couldn't one person make his damn mess of a life easier for just 5 freaking minutes? Evelyn, he called as she turned to walk back out. Evelyn! Damn it, he whispered, and looked up at the venom and then to Janice, watching him with wide eyes. It said something that he didn't try to taunt him with his choices. Percy groaned, pushing upward where he could. The venom bubbled and moved up only slightly. Please, please, please. I'm sorry, he said, and looked down at Janice. Could I throw it somewhere else? If it touches the fire, then it'll evaporate and become a gas to torture us all, Janice said, and leaned back. But of course, it's your choice, he said, as Percy tried again to keep it up even higher. It went a little closer, but not enough. Whatever you think is easiest to live with. Can you live with your choices? Percy snapped back. Percy snapped back and pressed up even more, straining. Janice's right face chuckled. His left face sobbed. Percy figured that was answer enough. He was getting closer. Taking a deep breath, he pushed again. I'm also the god of beginnings and endings, you know? His right face informed him. Percy gritted his teeth. Almost. I even see an end to your suffering. Oh, potential endings, he said. Percy slammed his hands down. Janice's left face shrieked, but the venom had balled up to land neatly back in the bucket. He wiped some sweat from his brow. I can't say I'm interested at the moment, Percy breathed out and pulled at Riptide. I have things to do, but good luck with that, he said, and rushed out past the curtain to where Evelyn was speaking to the Telecans with a nod, fingers inching towards the scythe. Once again, working off instincts alone, Percy slammed his hand down on the ground and sent everyone stumbling. Percy, Evelyn greeted and pulled at her pole. You came back. How's Janice? She asked, and readied her net in her opposite end. Percy raised Riptide. Come on, we don't have to fight, she frowned. Then walk away from the scythe. I guess we have to fight then, she grumbled and glanced over at where Nico was staring with wide eyes. Go over there. Wait. What's going on? He asked. I thought you were friends. And how did you do that? He asked Percy, gesturing in bafflement to the Telecans on the floor. Listen to Evelyn and go somewhere safe, Percy said, not taking his eyes off of her as they began to circle one another. Keep an eye on your arm. Nico didn't look thrilled, but stepped back towards the edge of the forge. There was a brief moment of silence as Evelyn and Percy studied one another, then the scythe between them. A few tense beats fell between them before Evelyn launched herself forward, striking first. Percy raised his sword and deflected, sending a loud clang echoing through the forge. Fighting Evelyn was like fighting water itself. Every movement was fluid and forceful. Still, years of practice and solely depending on his sword when Poseidon had bound his powers left him a formidable opponent as well. For every strike he had a parry. Percy dodged and weaved, a little grateful there was no water near them. She would surely beat him if they were. As it was, he wasn't really winning. Sliding underneath her pole, he did a sort of limbo to avoid being hit in the head before diving over to where other weapons were being melded over various fires. He deflected another hit, kicking out before sidestepping out of the way. Evelyn spun out after him, throwing her net at his feet. He jumped over it before kicking it behind him and pulled out one of the knives from the fire, using it to deflect Evelyn's next hit. Orange sparks sprayed everywhere when he spun out. As he spun out, oscillating between Riptide and the knife as best he could. You know how to use that, Evelyn noted and ducked when Percy struck again. It was almost like holding a shield and a sword, except instead of a shield, it was another weapon. Well, decently, she rectified as Percy kicked out at her before rolling. My sister taught me a few weeks ago, he said. Gods, had it only been a few weeks since he and Selena had spoken in that weapon shed? Evelyn jerked her pole up, smashing Percy's chin so hard that his jaw might have split. He hissed and stumbled back before ducking and slamming his shoulders into her stomach. She stumbled back before launching again. Percy deflected, but his grip loosened. Evelyn dove to the side to grab her net as he recovered. Try holding your arm further back, she suggested, sliding it over her shoulder. Is now the time? What? Maybe I'm a little jealous that your cool sister taught you how to use a knife. Evelyn grinned and threw her net out to wrap his sword up again. Is that how you use that word? Cool. Still catching up on the modern lingo. She breathed out and struck again. Her net drifted toward the scythe, so Percy closed the hand around his knife into a fist and punched her. Grabbing her net arm, he pulled it down, yanking her to the ground. She kicked up, heel jamming in his throat. He gasped, also falling to the ground. His eyes fell to Evelyn's bag of food and water. Percy wasn't sure he could overpower her, not like this, but he did have a chance on how to get the upper hand. Glancing over his shoulder, he crawled over to it, uncapping the water. That won't help you, Evelyn began between coughs, but was cut off when he tossed it into the nearest fire, turning the entire bottle into mist. Interesting approach, she muttered and waved her hand, so the other bottle of water went flying to her. I can show you a different method. Maybe next time, Percy said, summoning the mist. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath, then focused all of his energy into one small portion of himself. When he opened his eyes, Evelyn was looking as if he had lost his mind. What are you doing? She asked him. Can I fight you like this? She muttered, looking legitimately concerned. I'm so sorry, Percy told her. Her face grew more puzzled. I promise I'll make it up to you. Make what up to? Evelyn, someone called, and Percy watched with a bit of guilt as the colour drained from her face. Evelyn, you came back for us, a little girl called, rushing over to them. She was clearer than the images Percy had shown Ares on the beach. Years of training under his belt now. She almost looked real. Sarah? Evelyn murmured, and her net dropped. How? It's a long story, Hugo's voice said, and she whipped around. But we need to go, okay? Leave the scythe. Let's run. What are you doing? Stop that, Evelyn said, voice rising. Stop that. Percy yanked the pole from her hand and slammed the bottom of it on the back of her head. She crumpled to the ground. I'm sorry, Percy whispered to her and rushed over to where Nico was waiting, hiding behind a rock with absolute shock written over his features. I'll explain later, okay? He told him. We need to go, and he turned around. Where was the scythe? His concern rose a bit more, with the fun little dog beings venturing closer. A few more blocked the exits with weapons raised high. Apparently, knocking out Evelyn had identified him as an enemy. Figures. Percy looked around, a little concerned. He couldn't fight all of them. A few Silicans growled and snarled. Claws out as Percy backed up with Nico behind him. What could he do? He dug his feet into the ground, trying to think. He could sense something bubbling inside of him. Could he somehow summon water? Or something else? From the ground, Evelyn groaned. He needed to do something. Percy closed his eyes, focusing on the pool at the base of his stomach. There was no one here binding him, no blanket to dampen his powers. Whatever this was, it was raw and his and unhindered. He could feel the silicons coming closer, and Nico's hands clutched tightly in the back of his shirt. 3, 2, 1. He pushed Nico down, diving on top of him right as everything went black. Okay, that was fun. I love the story so much. the worst, the problem is, I keep on just forgetting what I've actually read, so I have no notes to tell you or things to tell you. Like, I don't remember what I just read. It was fun. I know that there was a lot of emotion in it. I do not remember most of it. I don't know how. You would think I would. You just read that. You just finished reading it 2 seconds ago. You should remember it. But no, apparently not. I almost wasn't going to record today because I decided to do high rocks, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a very intensive exercise thing. Problem is, I don't go to the gym regularly. I don't train or anything like that, so it just killed me. I don't know why I did that. I'm gonna do it next year, but I don't know why I did it. Anyway, I'm dead. But at least tomorrow will be interesting. Going to a little college, little? It's a very big one. A university open day. That'll be interesting. That'll be fun. What am I doing with my hands? I'm like just flopping them. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it because these are killing my voice so much. I literally think I've drinking. Okay. I literally think I drank too much water. You know what? It's actually really warm here. I should be drinking more water than I am, but so recording. I drink more water when recording than any other time of the day. Anyway, glad if you're still here, I appreciate you listening to me ramble on about random things that I'm doing because actually, if you're still here, like an hour and something in, good for you. I wouldn't have the patience. I put them on two. Oh, that's actually a good question. If you're still here, do you watch Podfics and stuff in 2 times speed or sped up, or do you keep the normal speed? Genuinely curious, because I have them on 2 times speed consistently. Recently, because I have the option, I've been putting on 3 times speed sometimes. It's a problem. Some people can't do Podfics on 2 times speed. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up. I've been rambling for a bit too long now. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you some jobs. I don't know when. I'm gonna be busy the next couple of weekends, so I'll only be recording on Wednesdays. And I don't know. Expect a lot fewer videos for the next 4-ish weeks, just because I have a lot of transfer international friends who are only staying here for the year. They go back on the 30th of May, so up until then, I'm gonna be hanging out with them a lot before they have to go back. So I will probably be doing a lot. Okay, no, actually, goodbye, bye bye.